The roundtable on how do we reinvent how veterans transition into society was one of the more moving and meaningful roundtables we've done this year. And what was so striking about this conversation was the gulf that really is between the less than 1% of Americans who now serve in the military and serve repeatedly, and the rest of us who are often oblivious of what's going on. And this conversation was not just about understanding the differences, but also doing something about it and doing something in very concrete and practical ways.
And it's important that we start this conversation not because we owe a debt to those who have served, but because we really owe it to ourselves as a country to think about and try to understand the growing civ-mil divide in our country.
Just to illustrate what this can be like, I woke up the morning I came back from Afghanistan as a platoon leader, literally in a foxhole in a rice paddy on a terrace side of an Afghan mountaintop. We'd been in a gunfight the night before, jumped on a C-130, took that airplane to Germany, and immediately got on a chartered commercial flight that took me and a flight full of other guys, all wearing camouflage, to Atlanta. And all of a sudden, here you are, you've been with the same intimately tight brotherhood of 25 to 30 men. Now I'm by myself. And when you deploy to a place like Afghanistan, you don't bring civilian clothing. And so I had to go buy clothes. So I head out and walk into the first clothing store I see, and there I am in desert fatigues and jump boots and an airborne beret. And this very fashionable young woman behind the desk asks me where I got that outfit. She thinks I must have gotten it in New York because it's too trendy for DC. I had absolutely no idea that it was a uniform or anything else. And this was 2005, so the country had been at war for a couple of years.
I served in the first Gulf War. That was 20-some years ago, and I think about it, literally every day and continue to process some of those experiences. Reentry, it is an abrupt thing because you go from, extremely intense situations to, in our case, cruising back to the San Francisco Bay. The processing of the wartime experience, it goes on for a lifetime.
Now, one of the issues we really explored, which gets in the way of integrating service people back into our economy and society, is this idea of the kind of mental issues they struggle with, particularly after repeated tours of duty.
By the time we get to the 1980s, the term post-traumatic stress disorder was coined to refer to a specific kind of constellation of issues a person can have after they've been exposed to a traumatic event. And then they find over the ensuing months, at least a month out, they either can't stop thinking about it, dreaming about it. The good news is most people don't get it. They're down around those rates in the general population of about 8%. There is treatment for it. That's the good news. And actually, most people with PTSD do respond to a combination of therapies.
Well, Andy was describing what is a full-blown diagnosis of PTSD, and many people coming back from deployment go through a period where they don't meet criteria for a particular diagnosis, but they find that the adjustment is hard. And so there might be increased irritability, a sense of being left behind, almost being ignored by others. At the workplace, if you think of the major transition between the high stress of a war zone, and then you go back to the factory where you're online, that transition takes some time. It's a level of frustration that they're experiencing, that their sense that they've done so much more and now they're undervalued here.
Then the conversation naturally segued into the difficulties transitioning veterans into the workplace.
Since so many veterans organizations do use my book with returning vets, the thing that strikes me now is that they have been in a subculture. And we have other subcultures. You have clergy, for example. The characteristic of these subcultures is they have their own vocabulary. And when they try to go from one subculture to another, as from being a veteran to being in the workforce, now this is a serious, serious thing. And the vets who are facing reentry are not prepared for that.
Leadership, initiative, creativity, all of those sort of core competencies do translate directly into civilian service. And those are things that we look for as an employer. And so I think that employers make a mistake when they are simply correlating skill for skill rather than thinking about veterans as an opportunity to bring people with really well-developed experiences in initiative, in leadership, and certainly in courage into an organization.
I guess in the military, you get trained and you get these military occupational specialty codes. One point is simply that there's been a number of efforts to try to translate those MOS codes into civilian skills. People with specific skills, like maybe airplane mechanic, they're not having too much trouble getting jobs. It's the people who are in infantry who find it hard to describe what they did, because even if you're a platoon leader, fire squad leader, even if you could lead people and you'd be a great manager, it's really tough to describe that, and that's maybe where you need the most help from someone like a recruiter or a hiring manager.
Direct frontline combat service is not something that happens if you don't make the cut. It's something you have to compete for. Along the way, the most profound thing they're taught is not how to use a rifle. It's that they can overcome anything through a combination of initiative, creativity, and commitment and fearlessness. That translates incredibly well to the civilian world if the job environment is challenging enough. I think one of the biggest challenges I see with reintegration for veterans is that you go from an incredibly high-functioning mode of being, and then you're bored out of your mind.
I would definitely second your comment that most of the guys that I've known help select and work with, they get bored. So they're not widget makers. But I think that's what I would tell employers as well. If you want a population of people who've been screened for their intellect, character attributes, effective intelligence, and their ability to play well with other people, if you find guys from the soft community or from those units where you had to fight to get into them, you have a quality of person that it's harder to find in the general population.
I think part of the issue now is the economic climate of the country makes it also harder to invite these very intelligent, very well-trained, productive, creative people back home at the risk of displacing others who stayed behind. What came to mind is a veteran recently who was arrested for being in a fight in his workplace, which was in a warehouse, where he brought a brand new idea about how to catalog much more effectively the materials coming in. But he was upsetting all the other people who were working there, and they provoked him into a fight. And what he talked about was being behind the scenes in Afghanistan, but that you were allowed to be creative there because he had to get the job done. And so the fit back home in the workplace is part of the issue, I think, facing employers.
Veterans do learn initiative and they learn teamwork, and people think that entrepreneurship is all about being sort of a lone ranger, but it actually isn't. It's about being able to inspire, motivate others to join you in the mission.
So we ended at a place that really understands this is a totally solvable problem. There is a lot better ways we can integrate returning veterans into our economy and our society.
First of all, I was so pleased to have so many ideas emerge from here, and I think we all ought to see veterans as a major resource. PTSD, even when it is severe, does not detract from the character of the person, nor their intellect, nor their ability to contribute over time.
I'd say for business leaders and for organizational leaders, veterans are effectively looking for really three things out of a workplace environment, I would say, broadly. They're looking for challenge and responsibility, they're looking for a mission-driven experience, and they're looking for a team that they can trust and believe in. But it's very, very difficult to teach mission-driven, goal-oriented initiative. And that's what veterans are going to bring to the table because, as many have said, they've been selected for that already. So it's a great opportunity to hire some really incredible people for your organization.
And what I would say and what I would leave for any business leader or government leader or citizen for that matter is we all should go out of our way to listen and to talk to veterans and learn their stories and learn their experiences, because it is an experience of citizenship. And it's something that we can all learn from. It's also why I'm so excited and grateful to Reinventors and T4A for organizing this, because they started a really important conversation. And just by having the conversation, we've taken a really important step today in addressing the civ-mil divide.